just let me know. But yeah, we'll just run with it here live today. Just wanted to say welcome, everybody, and thanks for finding time in your busy schedules to join us today to hear a little bit more about DVR services and how we can use some assistive technology throughout our process. Today I'm doing more of a general overview, more so about DVR services, because it's a little hard to talk to assistive technology unless you have somewhat of a basic understanding of DVR services. The other thing I would mention is that I'm discussing where we're at currently in regards to service provisions. If these things change, one thing I can speak of, just real recently, we had our Category 2 open up, and we're not having the wait list for those individuals. So things do change. So do know that you can contact your local office if you have any questions or things in your area for the most up-to-date information, but I'll speak to as we are kind of as of today. This just tells you what the DVR mission is, and that is to help obtain, maintain, and improve employment for people with disabilities by working with their VR counselors, the VR consumer, the employer, and other partners that we might be working with. And that could include schools, independent living resource centers, any number of our contracted service providers. DVR stands for the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. We are actually a division within the Department of Workforce Development. It is a voluntary program that assists individuals who want to work but need help obtaining work due to their disability. We do receive state and federal support to assist these individuals with employment services. We do value economic independence and community integration. One key point to note about DVR services is that we are time limited, with an average time to achieve a goal of approximately 2 years. We'll talk a little bit about the DVR process later on today, but the process really is different for everybody who comes in because it's very individualized. We have some individuals who come in who have some skills and background and knowledge in regards to what they would like to do vocationally. And then we have some other individuals that maybe we're doing some career exploration with them and possible training. So those individuals, the process for them might be a little bit longer. It's, like I said, it's very individualized. I do have our website here, so you can definitely take a look at that and find out more about DVR services after the webinar today. This is a map of the DVR service areas. So we are divided up into 11 workforce development areas. And you can see from the map here kind of those areas that are covered. I serve in WDA 9, the La Crosse area. So our main office is located in La Crosse. We do have a satellite in Vernon, but we cover that area there in the green. So you kind of get an idea, take a look at this and see where you're at. If you do go to the DVR website, you can locate this map, and then you can also locate the offices located in each one of those areas. Within DVR, we have licensed counselors, case coordinators, and supervisors, and this just gives you an idea of who we have working for us, in addition to our supports here in Madison, our senior leadership team. But the primary rehab team working with individuals consists of a licensed professional counselor with a master's degree, oftentimes related to vocational planning. We have case coordinators who assist and support the implementation of the plans, and then the supervisors who also are experienced in the field and help supervise and provide support and services as well. This is the DVR basic process, I guess. So Coming into services, somebody would need to complete a referral application. They move into intake orientation, eligibility, order of selection, plan for employment, job preparation and job search, assistance with finding suitable and stable employment, and then we look to follow along prior to file closure for 90 days. So these are, I guess, what I would say are the steps in the process that somebody would need to complete to have a successful experience with us. So I'm going to kind of go through each one of those steps here briefly. Referral and application, and then intake and orientation. You can actually access a referral for DVR services on our website. A consumer can complete that and would be contacted by their local DVR office in regards to getting them started with DVR services. We do request that the individual complete this referral themselves and/or assistance with a support person or guardian. Once an individual applies for services, it does require their signature or guardian signature. An individual can also contact their local office and request a referral or application if they don't have access to the web or assistance to do that. Once the referral is submitted and there's a signature on it, it actually becomes an application for services. Oftentimes, you're requested to meet with a counselor to talk a little bit more about their abilities in regards to work, their disabilities, maybe some barriers that they are experiencing because of that. And there are locations around the state that also offer a group orientation session that they might be asked to attend to learn more about DVR services to ensure that they are in fact interested in applying. We do have eligibility requirements for the program, and they're listed here. The individual has to have a documented physical or mental impairment that makes it difficult for them to get or keep a job. If there is no disability or diagnosis of a disability on record, DVR may be able to assist them with an evaluation or assessment to obtain that information. And that would be something that you would talk to your DVR counselor or case coordinator about when you come in and meet with them. The individual has to have limitations to employment as a result of their impairment to be eligible for services. And they do need to require DVR services to help them with employment. If an individual receives SSI or SSDI due to their disability, they are automatically eligible for services. From the point that a referral is submitted, the information I showed in the previous slide about submitting that online, we look to try to get those processed within 30 days. Oftentimes it's happening before 30 days and it turns into an actual application because the consumer has signed it. Once the application is signed, DVR has 60 calendar days to meet with an individual, gather information from them about their disability, their limitations to employment, obtain medical records and review that to determine if they're meeting the eligibility requirements for the program. I had mentioned earlier some information about our wait list. When DVR can't serve everybody who applies, we use a waiting list called the order of selection. DVR is required to serve people with the most serious limitations first. So that is how the order of selection process is used and had implemented this wait list that we have been under here. DVR uses the order of selection basically to determine who has the most serious limitations and who should be served first. So to give you a little more information about order of selection, when somebody comes in, they not only have to meet those eligibility requirements that I mentioned before, but they also go through this order of selection process. So when they're meeting with the DVR staff, they're talking about their disability and how that disability creates some limitations. The staff will want to find out more information specifically about how their limitations affect or are affecting their self-direction, self-care, work tolerance, work skills, interpersonal skills, mobility, and communication. By talking with consumer and any supports that individuals that they may have brought along with them, that could include parent, guardian, social worker, school staff, you name it, as long as the consumer is fine with them being there. They're going to identify if the individual has a serious limitation in each one of these 7 functional areas. It may be that an individual has a serious limitation in all of these areas, or it may be that they only have a serious limitation in 1 or 2 of these areas. A general rule of thumb is that if somebody requires an accommodation to overcome or try to work towards overcoming a barrier in one of these areas, it is automatically considered a severe, or I'm sorry, that was our past terminology, a serious limitation in these areas. So I guess the example that I might use here is in the area of mobility. If somebody needs to use a wheelchair or walker, or something of that nature to be able to move about their community, their home, their work environment, they would automatically have a serious limitation in mobility. After reviewing all 7 of these functional areas, and once it's determined if there's a serious limitation or not, the individual is then, it's then determined which category the individual will be placed in. As you can see here, category 1, you have to have 4 or more serious functional limitations. In category 2, you have to have 1 to 3 serious functional limitations, and category 3 is all other eligible individuals. So I'm just going to bop back here once. So to be in category 1, you would have to have a serious limitation in any one of these 4 functional areas. It doesn't matter which ones they are, it just has to be 4 or more. Category 2 is 1 to 3 in these areas. The other thing I would mention is those individuals who are automatically eligible because they're receiving SSI or SSDI, they have to be placed in category 2 or 1. So I'm jumping ahead here. If somebody comes in and they're automatically found eligible and placed in category 2 because they received those benefits, we still want to meet with them, talk with them, review medical records and such, and determine if that's the appropriate placement or if they shouldn't be maybe placed in category 1 because of the number of serious limitations they may have because of that disability. Once an individual is determined eligible for services and not on our waiting list, as of January of this year, we currently are able to activate people off of our waiting list immediately if they fall in category 1 or category 2. We had a waiting list for individuals up until this month that were in category 2. So that's good news because we're able to start working with them sooner than we would have been able to prior to January of 2015. What we want to do is work with the individual, their support team, in regards to identifying an appropriate vocational goal so that we can move forward with writing a plan for employment. There's any number of ways that we can go about assisting individuals with determining that goal. That might be working closely with other individuals that they have involved in their life, taking a look at previous work history, things that they've maybe been completing through volunteerism, work experience, any number of things. We can also do some actual service referral for some more formalized assistance in determining vocational goals, and that could be anything from on-the-job assessments to a vocational evaluation to job shadowing. It's all very individualized in regards to what the consumer's needs are. This assessment period is actually a period where we could start to look at assistive technology. If we had somebody on a work site and they were experiencing some difficulties with completing a task, we could actually start looking at assistive technology there. What assistive technology could potentially be in place to address that barrier, to help them be able to be more successful with that work task and work more independently. So you can get assistive technology assessments or involved very early in the process in helping to determine a vocational goal. The basic stuff that goes on the employment plan, kind of getting back to the slide here, is we have to identify a goal, a vocational goal. We have to identify services necessary to address their disability to help them obtain and maintain employment. We work out progress measures to demonstrate forward motion towards reaching those employment goals. We also identify what the consumer's responsibilities will be, as well as DVRs. We can work together to write this plan, or the consumer actually has the option of writing it on their own. Ultimately, the plan needs to be approved by both the consumer and the DVR staff. The Job Center website is there just for some information. For those, I'm sure many of you are aware of it, but that was a good resource for people to know about. Let's see, I think maybe I'm jumping ahead here a little bit, but I talked about we can assist with identifying their strengths and abilities. We can help provide resources, services to help them with reaching their job goal. Some of those resources might be a service referral to another provider to maybe complete that assistive technology assessment that I mentioned, a referral to the Job Center to do some career cruising, perhaps a referral to another contracted DVR service provider to look at setting up a trial work experience or an on-the-job assessment where we can take a better look at what they're doing well, what their interests are, what their capabilities are, and then see, like all of us, where maybe they could look to secure a little more training or a little additional assistance through assistive technology or job coaching even. We want to assist with addressing the disability and the barriers. We want to stay connected, and we stay connected with the individual and their employment team, and at least every 30 days to talk about, how things are going, what they're working on, what we're working on to assist them so that everybody's on the same page and there's that forward movement that was discussed earlier. DVR can support costs of needed and necessary items for the individual to reach their job goal. This could potentially be some assistive technology devices if they're necessary for them to reach an employment goal and or their training needs, if it's identified that they're requiring training. I've mentioned that services are very individualized with DVR. Everybody who comes in doesn't do the exact same thing. You sit down, you work one-on-one with the individual in regards to identifying what their needs are to reach their employment goal, and the plan is developed around that. So the same would be true for tech needs. Not everybody that comes in is going to receive the exact same technology. If it's required, it's going to be very individualized to that consumer in regards to addressing barriers that they're experiencing because of their disability. Just kind of looking through here, as their plan is being created, barriers regarding moving forward with their goals are identified. If a barrier could be resolved with the assistive technology and is considered appropriate and necessary, and we can move forward, and assessment may be completed to help identify what those assistive technology needs are. I think I already kind of mentioned that, but just reviewing that. Here's an idea of some things that can go on an employment plan for an individual to help them with securing their employment. Again, very individualized, so everybody might not have this listed on their plan, but this just gives you a little bit of an idea of some things that are commonly put on plans. Information and referral, transition to work services for those high school students, potential supported employment services, which can be anything from assessment to assistance with securing job leads, job applications, obtaining that job, and then potentially job coaching if that's needed. Assistive technology, and it's important to emphasize the training part of that too, looking at technology and making sure that we're not just supplying them with the technology, but that we're making sure that they know how to use it and how to implement it at work. Training, if needed, to obtain that employment goal, job preparation, and I mentioned job development and search already. What does AT mean to DVR? Assistive technology refers to utilizing technology, engineering, or science to solve a disability-related barrier. I realize that's a broad definition. I think we've all heard people talk about high tech and low tech, and there's a few examples here. But really, it is just taking a look at what might be a barrier. I think a lot of us use technology to help address barriers that maybe we have, or to make I guess work easier. I think we all could probably say that we have some technology. I think our computers definitely make things easier for many of us, but it's just important to know that we're really looking at the individual and what their needs might be. And we might take a look at some high-tech things as well as some low-tech things to address those barriers. When do we use adaptive tech? When it's necessary and appropriate. We're not going to look to provide assistive technology to somebody if it's not required to address a barrier to employment. But here are some examples. If somebody is having some barriers due to their disability, they perhaps might need it to help get through some schooling, to navigate a job if they don't have vision. Maybe they need some notifications or alarms. Maybe they're needing the technology to communicate with consumers that they're potentially working with, or staff, or perhaps we need that too to be able to work with the individual, to be able to get back and forth to work, to accommodate some physical limitations such as bending, sitting, standing, or walking. Assistive technology, we feel, is used to assist the individual to get to the same functioning level as other employees. I talked a little bit about the assistive technology assessment, but just to kind of come back to that, DVR does have a list of vetted service providers across the state who may be utilized in completing the assessment. The assessment is usually done one-on-one with the individual. Oftentimes they have the ability to not only have an interview and talk a little bit more about the limitations or barriers that they're experiencing, but they also have the opportunity to try out different types of technology, to demo them, to really get their hands on them and see if it would work for them. Those technologies are sometimes used on a demonstration for one of those short-term trial work experiences or on-the-job assessments. Maybe we'll try a couple of different types of technologies to see what would work best in that type of environment. After the assessment's completed, the service provider oftentimes provides us with a list of options that might work for the individual in regards to worker training. We take a look at that with the consumer, the individual, as well as perhaps that service provider and the DVR counselor, and really talk about what's the best match for them, what's reasonable, appropriate, and necessary. So here's just kind of a recap. What's included in the assessment, it depends on the individual's needs. The one thing I didn't mention here is that if at all possible, if we're working with somebody who actually is working at the time that they apply, we try to do some of that in the work site, so we can make the best, so that the service provider can make the best recommendations as possible. As mentioned here, the report is generated with the recommendations and discussed. I jumped ahead a few slides here with what I was saying earlier. I apologize for that. But we do sit down, talk about the recommendations, you know, and those things are taken into consideration. DVR does need to look at the least costly accommodation that is available to address a barrier. So sometimes individuals might want something with a few more bells or whistles on it. DVR would be able to look at assisting with what would be meeting their needs, but maybe didn't have all those bells or whistles. There's typically an individualized a conversation that takes place in regards to if somebody's wanting to purchase something with those bells and whistles, and we're looking at kind of the basic model that would meet the need. They do have the opportunity to potentially cost share to purchase the higher cost item that maybe has a few more bells and whistles that they're looking at to maybe use outside of the employment, since our main focus is that employment world. We do have a DVR fee schedule that we have to review in regards to some limits that we can spend. That being said, if the technology costs exceed that, there is an exception process that can be done with the individual to request the higher cost item if it exceeds what's on the fee schedule. And that's just a matter of typing up the request, sending it on to a DVR supervisor or director, and depending on the cost, potentially a member of our senior leadership team for approval. We oftentimes try to collaborate with high schools, tech schools, other colleges and employers, as well as the consumer in regards to maybe cost sharing, if that's an option. If it's that it's needed for them in school as well as employment, we have around the state had the opportunity to do some cost sharing with different individuals. Again, that's very individualized, depending on the individual and their situation, potential resources that they might have available, or different individuals that they're working with. I have listed here some information about the independent living resources and job accommodations. In case you're not familiar with them, it would be worth taking a peek at those. Here's that slide on cost sharing. I seem to be one slide ahead of myself here. I apologize for that. But here's some other individuals that we've worked with in regards to that cost sharing. I think I mentioned schools, employers, the consumer, but we do also work with long-term care providers, nonprofits. If there are no other comparable benefits available to assist with the cost of the item, DVR may be able to support the cost completely, as long as it's reasonable, appropriate, and necessary within that state fee schedule, unless that exception comes into place, and then that would need to be reviewed. We do need to complete cost comparisons. So basically, we're wanting to take a look at, you know, kind of comparing, get the best bang for our buck, I guess I would say, taking a look at, you know, different places that the item could be purchased to make sure we're getting the best price. Here it talks about certain items have a max amount of funding available. And these are more in regards to hearing aids, computers, and medical services, but that kind of ties in with our fee schedule. Maintenance and training, here's some information on that. Once items are purchased, it is their responsibility to, you know, maintain them, and the counselor can work with them. We do recognize that there's a need for training. We often talk about that, define kind of the length of time for the training, who's going to provide it, and it's all very much determined on a case by case. Once an individual has been found eligible, they've worked through that career exploration, a plan's been written, We're looking to help them secure employment. That is another kind of a major step, is helping an individual secure employment. And that can be done through assistance with resumes, job developers, helping with interview skills training, a number of different things. But just wanted to mention that even after that individual has secured employment, we do look to follow them for a minimum of 90 days to make sure that the employment's going well. This is where that assistive technology might come into play as well, because we may be purchasing some items that are needed for them to maintain that job. During that 90 days, we're wanting to make sure that the training's happening, that things are running smoothly, that the technology is in fact addressing the barrier that we had hoped that it would, to make sure that they're doing well at work. We want to verify that that's all going well prior to file closure. Post-employment services is in regards to if somebody's file is closed and they're feeling like something's come up. You know, it's been 6 months since my DVR file was closed. I'm having some issues at work. We can potentially reopen that file and provide some short-term services. Otherwise, people do have the ability to reapply for services if needed in the future, even after their file is closed. This just tells you a little bit more information about the DVR Aztec team that I'm the leader of. This is a statewide team of volunteer DVR staff. That would be counselors as well as those case coordinators from across the state with an interest or experience or knowledge in assistive technology. We meet every other month and review concerns, develop trainings, resources, exchange knowledge about new technology, and collaborate with other agencies regarding disability and assistive technology. Our mission is to promote, educate, and support the use of AT throughout the DVR process. And these are the 5 areas that we have a concentration on. So just want to let people know that team is out there, and there's at least 1 to 2 representatives from each of those workforce development areas on the team. So there's somebody probably in your or close to your local office there that you could talk a little bit more about the team or assistive technology. These are a few projects that we've worked on. In the past year, we've surveyed DVR staff and identified training needs and are providing support that we can to help provide that, and there'll be some additional training coming up for DVR staff. We have developed a statewide assistive technology service provider list for all staff to access and use. We are currently working on updating the DVR staff guidance on assistive technology and working with our sister team, the DVR sensibility team. They primarily work with, in identifying resources and services for individuals with sensory impairments. So we're trying to pull together some kind of best practices and expectations in regards to staff and service providers. And we're also exploring a little bit more on that assistive technology assessment and defining more key components to that we'll be working with our providers on. Here's actually a list of the team. So again, that WDA that you're seeing, that's in reference to that workforce development area and the number that you saw on that map. And this is also on the web. And I was feeling like I was running short on time, so I know I kind of hurried through those last few slides, but I'm definitely open to questions at this time if individuals have that. Hello?
Say, Kathy, this is Lene. I do have a question. You said the reps for the Aztec team. Where can you find that information?
And that should be on our website as well. If you go onto our website, it should list our statewide teams. But let me get back down to it on the PowerPoint here, maybe leave that up for a little bit for people to see, who those individuals are. So WGA1 would be the Racine area. Is everybody seeing my content that I'm showing?
Yes, you're still sharing your screen.
Okay. Yeah. We actually had down at the bottom there in the second column, Tanya and Roxanne were members on the team from actual WDAs, but with the Promise grant, they moved to the Promise position. So it's kind of neat because we have representation from every WDA, but we also have representation on the team from the Promise grant. And for those of you who are familiar with Promise, I know that they're looking at a lot of technology with the youth that they're working with as well. So it's good to get, input on that grant that we're currently working through as well, for our team and for consideration for staff and for consumers to make sure that we're well-rounded.
I also like the slide you shared on the training, the job prep, and job search. That correlates very closely with our post-secondary transition plan in terms of transition services. There's definitely, obviously, crossover with the planning and your planning, and that is a good list. Overall, you've shared great information as to the how-tos and as well as what your parameters are. And I think sometimes that's the biggest piece, is just knowing and having and being given accurate information, and you definitely gave that today.
Yeah, I think it's really neat to, when I was working as a counselor, I loved going out to the schools and meeting with the teachers and hearing about what they're doing with the students and how we could potentially piggyback some of our services, and really feel like we had a more flavorful menu of services for them in regards to what the school was doing, how we could help, to really get them out there and trying different things, identifying strengths, interests, capabilities. So it's great that they overlap, like you said, because I know that the schools are working on things with them as well. And so then just to have a larger team working with that individual and bringing everything to the table, it's great to have that collaboration.
Absolutely. Do we have any questions at this time? Okay. Kathy, I guess what I would ask you to do then is to stop sharing your screen.
Okay, let me see.
It would be either up top or below.
I'm only seeing.
Maybe escape or minimize. Yeah, there you go.
Is it gone now?
No, but because you have to get to your tab for us, for the Zoom.
Yep.
It should be under the More button, and you could just stop sharing, and that way I can take over.
It should be under the More button.
Yeah. Yes, maybe
I'm not seeing that.
at the bottom of your screen, maybe.
I'm sorry. I'm not seeing you at all anymore.
Okay. So let me see if I could just take over. I might be able to.
It's asking me to launch Zoom now. I can hear you, but I'm not seeing you.
Okay.
Okay. So I want to. You cannot stop screen sharing while another participant is sharing. So this must be you that's sharing now.
Is it back on me? Okay, yes it is.
Okay.
I was able to jump on. Thank you so much, Kathy.
Mhm.
Oh,
I guess I'll just take the time, Lene, while you're getting that going. Just to thank everybody who sat in today and appreciate your sticking with us through our technical difficulties. Um, and feel free to check in with your local DVR office if you have questions about things. There are a number of them that are offering those orientation sessions, and that they kind of go through a DVR 101 during those as well. And you probably find those very helpful too if you're not familiar with DVR, and have the opportunity to ask some questions and collaborate with your local office.